Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Blank Check here. There. Here. Q&A Part 3, woo! Time to get away from those annoying ponies, am I right? This is Part 3, we are away from ponies, and I'm going to temper the vocals because if you're here, you and I are already besties. We're all friends here. This final piece of the puzzle will cover questions relating to those interactive computer games I've heard so much about, the small screen, the big screen, the educational system because why not, the guy behind the pony, and a whole bunch of random nonsense. Let's do this. Category 1. Games ponies play. Some of you were surprised to hear how into gaming I am. Yes, I've been a lifelong gamer, and I've frequented gaming news websites for years. These days, I spend more time keeping track of the industry than I do actually playing. In the past, I have considered pursuing a career in game design, and though that's not where I'm headed right now, there's always a possibility I could end up helping design relevant hardware or software in the future. Number 1. Favorite games. I wrote Evil Laugh in my script, but I don't feel like doing that. This is the longest answer in any of my Q&A videos by far. I'll even include a timestamp of when it ends, and I'm going to speak faster than usual. I'm going to cover my favorite games by generation because that helps me remember most of them, since I've played many hundreds of video games. Let's go. Generations 1 and 2? I don't have any personal experience with these. There was an Atari in the house when I was a kid, but if I played it, I have no memory. Pac-Man is classic, but I never touched the original. Generation 3, the Nintendo Entertainment System. My first video game, though it predates me by over a decade, was Super Mario Bros. / Duck Hunt. I wouldn't call it a favorite necessarily, but this was a notable moment, sparking an illustrious gaming lifestyle. The one game I would mention here is Super Mario Bros. 3. Nintendo honed their platforming knowledge and delivered a standout side-scroller that's still great today. Generation 4, the SNES Genesis era. To immediately one-up that, I would absolutely include Super Mario World, my favorite 2D platformer of all time. The game is truly timeless. It is 16-bit perfection. Just looking at the world map makes me want to pick up a controller, and the release of Super Mario Maker got me itching for another playthrough. I was very young when my dad brought home a SNES, so there were a lot of core games I did not know about or did not fully understand. So, A Link to the Past and Super Metroid are not on my list. Also, Final Fantasy VI, or 3 for America, was something I never got my hands on. However, I did have Chrono Trigger, and that is one of my favorite RPGs ever. This time-traveling adventure grabbed me from start to finish. Also on Super Nintendo, I'd give mentions to Donkey Kong Country 2 and Super Mario RPG. This is also when the Game Boy was launched, so a quick shout out to Pokemon Red and Blue. I was absorbed by the first couple generations of Pokemon, and I had both versions at one point or another. I owned a Genesis, but nothing there makes my list. I always considered Sonic to be on a lower tier than Mario. It's a bit too unwieldy for me. Generation 5, the N64 PlayStation era. This is where my gaming habits and preferences really started to form. These consoles launched when I was a baby, but like the previous generations, I jumped in later. Once again, there were a ton of games that passed me by, and unfortunately, because this was the birth of 3D gaming, this generation has aged poorly, because mechanics, design, and of course visuals have improved tremendously over time. It's easier to go back to SNES games than it is N64. That said, some things still stand out to me. Super Mario 64 is one of them. It's not as great as it once was, but it was a landmark in video game history, and it's still totally fun. I really appreciate the open level design of the stages, and it's something I wish Nintendo would go back to in a future Mario installment. Super Mario 64 is still a colorful and diverse blast of nostalgia. Next, I've shown my love for this game a few times during reactions, and it is often the title that I point out as my favorite game, as a mix of both admiration and nostalgia. And that game is Paper Mario. I adore this title, and it still holds up. The simple but interactive turn-based combat, the cast of colorful, lively party members and NPCs, the inventive visual design mixing a polygonal world with sprite-based characters, 8 chapters, each with a unique and enjoyable environment to explore. The reasons I love this game in many ways mirror the reasons why I like MLP. Its narrative is defined by a lighthearted, upbeat charm, a vibrant aesthetic, a cast of likable and often exaggerated characters, and a sense of self-awareness that grounds it. Paper Mario is a 20-hour ride that puts a smile on my face no matter how many times I've been through it. I've always liked Mario games, but this was the first time that I really cared about its world. Anyway, I'll cut this gen short there. Honorable mentions go to Final Fantasy IX, Crash Bandicoot Warped, Mario Kart 64, Mario Party, aka the best friendship destroyer this side of Monopoly, Spyro 2, and Pokemon Gold and Silver. Also, retroactively, Metal Gear Solid and Ocarina of Time. These are 2 games I did not love back then, but I've come to really appreciate them in recent years for their quality and their impact on the industry. Gen 6, the PS2, GameCube, Xbox era. Now we're talking. This is the generation where I really became a gamer. I was an older kid now, I was better at keeping up with new releases, and I developed an appreciation for the more nuanced aspects of mechanics and stories. Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. This was my first Metal Gear, and this is my favorite Metal Gear. The 60s Bond-influenced espionage narrative, coupled with Kojima's trademark convoluted brilliance. This was an experience, and it was among the first game stories to make me feel real emotion. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. I admit this may be an objectively better game than Paper Mario 64, but nostalgia pushes me in a different direction. Still, this is right alongside the original as one of my all-time favorites, bringing back everything that made the first one great in a more fleshed out, better-looking experience. All my praise for the original applies to this one, though I don't enjoy the villains quite as much, and Chapter 2's a tad bit underwhelming. That said, the arena fights in Glitzville and the 3-day train mystery are brilliant. Resident Evil 4. I was never a fan of the earlier games, and definitely not a fan of the newer games, but RE4 is a masterpiece of action horror. It helped establish third-person shooters, it had a great atmosphere, awesome level design, and it's maybe my most replayed single-player campaign ever. Going back through with an infinite ammo Tommy gun and rocket launcher is gratifying. Halo Combat Evolved. This is my most played cooperative game. For months, my friend and I would blast through this campaign after school, along with Halo 2, and not care about how many times we made our way through its levels. Halo had a huge influence on the FPS genre, especially on consoles, and I admire the mix of tight corridors and open battlegrounds, as well as the fun variety of weapons and alien enemies. Final Fantasy X. People a bit older than me point to 7, and people a bit smarter than me point to 6, but 10 is the one I fell in love with. The voice acting can be stilted, the narrative can be sappy, but I was completely engaged by this epic trek across the lands of Spira, and I was totally on board with its combat system. Compared to Active Time Battle, these were calmer, more self-paced fights that did retain some strategy. Super Smash Bros. Melee, my favorite fighting game. Smash Bros. Is still the ultimate local multiplayer experience, a series I've poured so many hours into with friends. It is chaotic bliss. I will main Kirby till the day I die. Ratchet & Clank, Up Your Arsenal. The Ratchet & Clank series is one of my favorites, even though it's had its ups and downs. Arguably, it peaked with its third entry, though A Crack in Time may be the best one. These games are filled with creative weapons, enemies, and environments, dynamic gameplay mixing platforming with unrelenting action, and a titular duo with plenty of chemistry. These games beg to be played over and over, with New Game Plus modes and a wide array of upgradable weapons. The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. I'm not the biggest Zelda player, but this one's my favorite. I was addicted to exploring the wide ocean on the King of Red Lions. Wind Waker looks beautiful and is full of that Nintendo charm. Because I have to stop somewhere, honorable mentions include Shadow of the Colossus, Half-Life 2, Super Mario Sunshine, which I might like better than 64, but it was less impressive for its time, Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, Ratchet & Clank Going Commando, Halo 2, God of War 2, my favorite character action game, SSX Tricky, my favorite sports game, and Luigi's Mansion, which is wonderful. Mario! Gen 7, oh goodness, everything came together here. This will likely go down as the generation where I played the most video games and was most in tune with the industry. High school allotted plenty of time to keep up. Mass Effect, the trilogy. Considered as a whole, these could be my favorite games of all time. None of them are perfect, but I fell in love with all of them. There are few fictional worlds I've been absorbed in to the degree of Mass Effect, from the moment the original let me loose on the Citadel to explore. I love the universe BioWare created. Between its alien races and its lore, its technology, and the looming galactic threat known as the Reapers. On top of this is a crew full of diverse and compelling personalities. Tali'Zorah, Garrus, Liara, and Rex are some of my favorite characters in video games. Metal Gear Solid 4. My second favorite Metal Gear, Kojima spared no expense with ramping up the crazy, convoluted storyline and providing an endless supply of melodrama in hours of well-directed scenes. It tied up loose ends and gave Snake an unforgettable send-off. The Last of Us. I've always loved Naughty Dog, and they continue to improve. Crash, Jack, and Uncharted were all some of the best games for their time. But The Last of Us was on another level. It's a compelling adventure with some of the most grounded and believable characters in gaming. The game is tense and packed with brutal action that only reinforces the atmosphere. And it's one of the most emotionally draining experiences I've had. I played through it 3 times near release and could not touch it again. Fallout 3. This was the first Bethesda game that grabbed me. I touched Morrowind and Oblivion, but they never sucked me in. Fallout's world was more compelling to me though. It has one of my favorite intros, growing up inside the vault before your father disappears and you leave to find him, walking out to a wasteland outside of Washington, D.C. This is a game where I would gladly search through every nook and cranny of every building for items and information. The base game hasn't aged gracefully, but that doesn't change the impact it had on me. And Fallout Equestria only made me appreciate the world even more. BioShock. Speaking of incredible worlds, Rapture is possibly the best video game setting of all time, and Andrew Ryan is one of the greatest antagonists. BioShock has a mysterious and engaging storyline, an incredibly effective twist, a moody and intriguing environment, and a top-tier open-level design. I don't always care about difficulty, but going through this on the hardest mode with Vita Chambers off, forcing strategic and deliberate gameplay, turned this into the best single-player shooter I've ever played. Super Mario Galaxy! Both of them. The second made improvements, but the first was novel in a way that could not be replicated. I would point to these as the best 3D platformers ever made. I miss the big hub world and open level design of 64 and Sunshine, but the Galaxy stages and mechanics are tuned to perfection. Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story. Super Paper Mario was good, but it did not feel like a real sequel to The Thousand Year Door. For that matter, neither did Sticker Star. God, what a mess. And by the looks of it, neither does the upcoming Wii U title. Fortunately, Bowser's Inside Story filled the Mario RPG void with addictive combat mechanics, a great premise, solid pacing, some hilarious characters, and diversity in gameplay by splitting time between the plumbers and Bowser himself. This is my all-time favorite handheld game. I'll dedicate this next one to my favorite multiplayer experiences of last generation. I dumped hours upon hours into Rock Band 2 and 3, Halo 3, and Gears of War 3 with friends both locally and online, often at the same time because these all allowed for that level of crossplay. There were a lot of great games last gen, and I can't dedicate time to all of them. Big mentions I'd want to make are Uncharted 2, Dragon Age Origins, Portal 2, Skyrim, Burnout Paradise, Ratchet & Clank A Crack in Time, The Walking Dead, Dead Space 1 and 2, Deus Ex Human Revolution, Assassin's Creed 2, Heavy Rain, God of War 3, Red Dead Redemption, and I'll throw in Super Meat Boy. Generation 8. Here we are! This still feels a bit too recent to add many games to my all-time list, but there's a couple. Danganronpa 1 and 2. These were made earlier, but not released in America until a couple years ago on the Vita. I played them on the television through a cheap PSTV device. They are incredibly entertaining and engaging murder mystery stories. They involve a cast of extraordinarily talented high school students who are held captive and told the only way to escape is to commit a murder without being caught. Your job as the player is to find clues and determine who each culprit is among your group of friends. They involve a cast of quirky, exaggerated, but deceptively deep characters who you often hate to see ending up on either side of the blade. Super Mario Maker. I have never touched this game, but I have seen more Super Mario Maker gameplay than almost any other video game. To me, this is the ultimate Let's Play title. I've watched everything I could on it from Game Grumps, Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, Giant Bomb, Stampy's Expert Runs, and every one of Patrick Klepek's over 100 Mario Maker morning episodes. I understand this game thoroughly. I've vicariously learned its mechanics, its breadth of content, and its endless value. This is the best game I've never played. My other favorites of the current generation were Undertale, The Witcher 3, Until Dawn, Legend of Zelda A Link Between Worlds, Super Mario 3D World, and Metal Gear Solid 5. And that is the end of question number 1. For those who skipped, I will run a few screens on the side here to summarize everything quickly. Video games. Am I right? Recording this made me really want to play through Paper Mario again. I do have it on the Wii U Virtual Console. Anyway, question number 2. What games do you play, if any? Do you play Team Fortress 2? Are you interested in Overwatch? How do you pronounce Broderick? I have not played many games recently. I have Fallout 4, Uncharted 4, and Life is Strange brand new, unplayed, and I really should start them up. I've fallen out of competitive gaming over the last few years, though Overwatch looks like a very polished experience, as one can usually expect from Blizzard. Number 3, favorite character from Undertale. That's tough. Papyrus and Mettaton are incredible characters, but I think my favorite would be Sans. Number 4, would you eat at a real Grillby's? No, because the food is designed for monsters who just absorb it into their bodies. I'd be afraid of the consequences. Number 5, do you prefer Sans' puns or Toriel's puns? Sans, because he's more aware of how terrible they are. Number 6, which do you prefer, Undertale or MLP? That's a weird question. In terms of the products themselves, they aren't really comparable, but in terms of fandoms, MLP, because the show has more characters, a more developed and visually defined world, and no real endings. It allows for a greater variety of fan content. Also, its innocent nature makes subverting the material and things like Fallout Equestria work really well. What do you like best? Undertale, Bride of Discord, or MLP? That's... what? Number Burger Pants. Why do you like Undertale? Many reasons. It boils down to Undertale being a throwback to old games that's smart and establishes its own identity. The dialogue is cheeky and entertaining in a self-aware way. The characters are incredibly memorable, the soundtrack is addictive, and the pseudo-bullet hell gameplay remains fun from start to finish because new enemies and bosses are littered throughout. The art style is minimal but pleasant, and the world manages to evoke an atmosphere even with those visuals. The enemy encounters are really what set it apart. Everything you fight has some personality, they aren't just fodder to be grinded like other games. And Undertale actively rewards you for never attacking a single one. That's a refreshing concept for an RPG, handled in a subtle enough way that makes you care about doing the right thing. And Toby took things further by diving into a meta commentary on gaming, with Flowey in particular. It's something that, in lesser hands, would have come across as trying too hard, but he handled it well. Number Big 3, Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft. There's a core part of me that always roots for Nintendo and considers it more sacred than the others, but in reality I've been more Sony oriented since the PS2. Number Reality, if you had a PS4, what games would you end up playing? None, because I'm too busy making Q&A videos. I do have a PS4. I played many games on it between 2013 and 2015, but I've had very little hands-on time this year. I poured considerable time into The Witcher 3, MGS5, Dragon Age Inquisition, Diablo 3, the Uncharted Collection, Until Dawn, Wolfenstein, Far Cry 4, Infamous, Alien Isolation, The Walking Dead Season 2, The Wolf Among Us, Shadow of Mordor, Spelunky, Binding of Isaac, Velocity 2X, and dozens more. I really need to boot up Uncharted 4 soon. Number Overwatch or Battleborn? I have not played either, but Overwatch looks like the better game by a country mile. Do you play games like Age of Empires or Warcraft? Do you play WoW? No, I'm not big on RTS or MMOs. Number Deja Vu. What are some, if any, gaming YouTubers you watch / favorite Let's Player? I covered my favorite YouTubers last part, so I'll quickly recap. Game Grumps are my favorite Let's Players because they're dumb in the best ways, and the games are secondary to the personalities for me. I go to Giant Bomb to hear about current games and the state of the industry. Other gaming channels I'll watch regularly are Markiplier for Let's Plays, JonTron for comedy, and Easy Allies for news. Number GGLP. What was your favorite Game Grumps Let's Play? For me, it was Punch-Out Wii. That's a tough question. There are a lot of really good ones. Sonic 06 is legendary. Sonic Boom was a disaster. Pokemon Fire Red is amazing because of how Dan reacts to every new creature. I had great nostalgia trips with Super Mario 64, Sunshine, and Wind Waker. The Dog Island and Endless Ocean 2 are highly memorable, and Kirby's Dream Course is a spectacle. But Game Grumps' Mario Maker Saga is fantastic. Ross is a sadist, and it's beautiful. Number Pew Pew! Plan on playing any other video games on the channel? Nothing's planned right now, and I don't really have the hardware for a lot of things, but I will hopefully be getting a new computer by the time school starts back up. We'll see. Number We'll see! Have you played any MLP-themed fan-made games? Would you consider putting footage of playthroughs on your channel? I have not, and those could be a possibility since they're relevant and don't seem very resource intensive. Category 2. Jeez. Fandom, film, and TV. Number 1. What fandoms are you part of? It depends on what constitutes being part of a fandom. I think it requires more than just enjoying the primary content. I like a lot of things. Game of Thrones is one of them, but I don't really do much outside of watching the series. If I were to consider myself a part of any fandom outside of MLP, they'd all be gaming related. I'm effectively in the all-encompassing video game fandom, but on an individual franchise level, I'm big on Mario, Metal Gear Solid, and Mass Effect. And these are niche compared to Undertale, Pokemon, or Portal. Number 2, what are your opinions of Call of Duty Zombies, Game of Thrones, and The Walking Dead? I was never a fan of COD Zombies or most survival modes in games. Game of Thrones is probably my favorite show currently airing, and among my all-time best. The Walking Dead? The show is fine, and I've seen all but the most recent season. The games are pretty stellar. I love Telltale's style, and there are few characters in recent memory that I was attached to as strongly as Clem. I never read the comics. Number Catch'em-all. How do you feel about Pokemon and the anime? I like Pokemon, but I haven't touched it in a long time. I fell out of the games and the series sometime before Generation 4. Pokemon Snap is still amazing though. Number 4, have you heard of the Homestuck fandom? Yes, because the girl who sat behind me in Chemistry 2 during high school was a big fan. Number Secret Life. Blank. Did you work at Disney? I did not. And I wasn't aware that movie existed until shortly after making my OC. Number Sequel. What do you think of Finding Dory? Great movie. Not quite as good as the original, few things are, but it's an emotional ride with lovable characters. It's a very worthy successor, much more so than Cars 2 or Monsters U. Number I just can't wait to be queen. Favorite Disney princess movie? Ooh, that's rough. Honestly, it would be between my favorite from the 90s Renaissance, which is Beauty and the Beast, and my favorite from modern Disney, which is Tangled. Number, take it a step further. Favorite Disney movies in general. Okay, I'm going to exclude Pixar and say that definitively The Lion King is my favorite Disney movie. Aside from the two I mentioned in the last question, I'll toss in Aladdin, Tarzan, the first Pirates of the Caribbean, and I suppose Frozen. Number, here we go, favorite movies. Oh geez, another list. My favorites are the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I like to consider them as a whole, and I usually have a rough time choosing between Fellowship and Return of the King. But I love everything about them. I have the extended Blu-ray set on my shelf to occasionally relive the memories. And the line, "Friends, you bow to no one," has brought me to tears more times than I would like to admit. Other than that, I may miss a big one, but let me shoot through my other favorites. I already addressed my top Disney movies, but now I'll include Pixar and mention Inside Out, WALL-E, Finding Nemo, Toy Story 3, and Up. Seriously, they're just an incredible studio, and I doubt I need to say anything more about them. I'm not completely cultured on pre-80s film, but I have seen a number of them. Favorite movie from the 1930s, Gone with the Wind. 40s, Casablanca. 50s, 12 Angry Men. 60s, oh boy, Stanley Kubrick. Sometimes I can't tell if I love his movies or just respect them, but 2001: A Space Odyssey and A Clockwork Orange are unforgettable. 70s, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which had Jack Nicholson during his prime and an ending that hit me hard. And to be honest, a lot of my tastes mirror IMDb. They have a page with the top 250 highest rated films, and I can find most of my favorites by sifting through that. Shawshank Redemption, an incredible prison film adapted from a Stephen King novella. It's number 1 on their list. The Dark Knight is their number 4, which I would admit is too high, but it is without a doubt my favorite comic book film. And speaking of Nolan, I really enjoy his material. Memento, The Prestige, and Inception are rock solid, and I loved Interstellar despite its flaws. Schindler's List is my favorite movie that I never want to see again. Once is good enough for a lifetime. While we're on the topic of Spielberg and the World War II era, Saving Private Ryan is my favorite war film. Pulp Fiction and Django Unchained would be my 2 picks for Tarantino, who I admire for his wacky style. Fight Club is really good. The attitude may be a little dated now, but man is it entertaining. City of God is one that many of you probably aren't familiar with, but it is fantastic. It's a Brazilian film that shows friends who take a very different path in life as they grow up in the gang-filled, drug-ridden streets of Rio de Janeiro. Spirited Away is my favorite film from Studio Ghibli and top anime in general. though Princess Mononoke is close. But this one has so much imagination and intriguing atmosphere to it. Rarely have I found a world that's simply so absorbing. My two favorite horror films are Alien and the 1980s remake of The Thing. Both have a great structure, a tense atmosphere, good characters, and use practical effects, well, effectively. Terminator 2 and Aliens are fantastic action movies that still hold up. I do prefer T2 over the original. Let's not talk about the later entries in either franchise. My favorite Hitchcock film is North by Northwest. Unforgiven by Clint Eastwood is my favorite Western. Pan's Labyrinth is a modern classic from Del Toro. It is imaginative and unsettling. My pick for the Coen brothers would be No Country for Old Men. Sorry, Lebowski. The Truman Show. Still my favorite thing from Jim Carrey. Slightly over Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Jurassic Park is one of my favorite pure blockbusters. Something Spielberg got totally correct. Some more. My favorite DreamWorks films are the two How to Train Your Dragon movies. My favorite Star Wars is The Empire Strikes Back. Blade Runner is a classic sci-fi film. And Children of Men is an engaging film covering the potential extinction of the human species. Also, there's a spot in my heart for comedy horror. Tremors is a nostalgic favorite that I could still watch and enjoy. And the more recent Cabin in the Woods was spectacular with its mix of homage and satire. Also, this might be controversial, but I did have an obsession with Avatar when it came out. It's one of those worlds that I looked at and thought, man, I want to be there. Number Kawaii Desu Senpai Naruto. Do you watch anime? If so, which ones? I have watched a decent amount of anime thanks to a friend, but I don't keep up with anime. My favorites have been Cowboy Bebop, Death Note, Full Metal Alchemist, I only saw the original, Code Geass, Fooly Cooly, and Baccano. I've also been through Psycho Pass, Attack on Titan, Black Lagoon, Welcome to the NHK, and Beck. I kept up with a portion of Naruto and One Piece. And when I was younger, I watched Dragon Ball, DBZ, Inuyasha, Yu Yu Hakusho, and of course, Pokemon, Digimon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! And when it comes to film, I've seen most works from Studio Ghibli. Number admission, is MLP your favorite show? No. Love the fandom, but judged solely as a television show, I could not see it in my top 10. Number Toontown. Favorite cartoon series? Without a doubt, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Phenomenal series on all fronts. What other cartoons are you a fan of? In terms of modern cartoons, Gravity Falls was wonderful, and though Legend of Korra never quite caught that same magic as the original, it was great, and it got pretty close during Season 3. I have watched enough of Steven Universe and Adventure Time to know I enjoy them. I don't see too many cartoons these days. I'll still catch South Park, though that's obviously a very different sort of thing. And in that same vein, Rick and Morty is amazing. In the past, some of my favorites were Futurama, the proper Teen Titans, Samurai Jack, the first several years of SpongeBob and Fairly Odd Parents, Kids Next Door, Recess, Hey Arnold, early Family Guy. There's too many to name all the ones I've watched over the years. Number Magic Box. What are some of your favorite shows? I'll use this to focus on live action, though for the record, Avatar would be my number 5 here. Lost is my favorite show, and it is a mess, but it sucked me in and I did not drop out when a lot of fans did. I've even come around pretty well on the ending. It's a show that has so many unforgettable characters, episodes, and moments for me. A recurring theme in my favorite shows, films, and games is a great ensemble cast of characters. To me, they're often more key than the narrative itself in making a creative work one of my favorites. In that vein, the 2004 remake of Battlestar Galactica is my second favorite show. Watching the crew of this space fleet, the last remnants of humanity, fight to survive against a hostile AI race they created and search for a new home, it's full of tension, paranoia, conflicting morality, and questions concerning the nature of humanity. I really need to rewatch that. Breaking Bad was phenomenal, one of the most solidly crafted things I've seen on a TV screen. I so often lean towards sci-fi or fantasy, but this one was a grounded, tense, incredibly acted experience that repeatedly kept me on the edge of my seat. There's a lot of character development and build-up, but that made the big moments second to none. Game of Thrones is the one currently airing show I'd put on here. I have not read the books, but this is not an adaptation that's hindered by a lack of external knowledge. Once again, a brilliant and talented cast, an unforgiving and tense world, and it's based on the works of a madman who will not hesitate to murder your favorite characters. The first 4 seasons of Dexter were pretty amazing. If we pretend it ended there, it gets a mention. I need to spotlight a comedy, and that would be The Office. What an amazing show. It may have peaked earlier on with Jim and Pam's relationship, but regardless, the writers and cast handled their scripts, delivery, and timing exceptionally well. Other long-running comedies I loved include Parks and Recreation and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. In terms of Case of the Week dramas, I adored House. He was such a terrible and entertaining character. Question, I have no idea. Star versus the Forces of Evil? I've seen a few episodes. It seemed fine, but I did not fall in love with it. Question, next one. Do you like Doctor Who? Yes, but I dropped out of it sometime during Smith's run. I'm one of those people who loved Tennant. Though I think I would like Capaldi, I need to give him a chance. Question, gotta go fast. Do you like and or love Sonic X and or Sonic Boom? If so, who is your favorite character? In terms of the shows, I have not seen a single episode. The game Sonic Boom, though, was unintentionally hilarious. And Knuckles is a doofus, so I pick him. Category 3, School! Boo! Not a question, congrats on graduating. Thank you. Number 1, are you graduating from high school or college? College. Number 2, what were you studying? What's your degree? Computer engineering. The love child between electrical engineering and computer science. Number 3, what university are you graduating from? That would be Virginia Tech. Number 4, how was your college experience? How did freshman year and senior year differ? It was generally pretty good, but very stressful. Freshman and senior year were night and day. When I began college, I experienced a bit of a culture shock, transitioning from a smaller town into a university with some 30,000 students. For the first time in years, I was totally out of my element. It affected my appetite pretty hard, and I lost a lot of weight. But I found more comfort falling back into the classwork itself, so my grades were fine. It was really fortunate that a brony club started up on campus shortly after I arrived. It was a nice place to be myself. By senior year, everything flipped. I had no problems on the social side of things, but I had miraculously managed a 4.0 through my first 3 years, and though it doesn't really matter much in the long term, I was terrified of slipping up after all that effort and failing to get an A in one of my classes. Also, I did not expect I'd be pursuing grad school until the end of the fall semester, so my mind was more focused on the future than it was on the present. And generally speaking, I grew tremendously as a person between the beginning and the end of my undergraduate run. I'm more confident in myself, more comfortable with self-expression, and better at handling criticism or mistakes, and I walked away with a more developed sense of empathy toward other people. I doubt I would have been able to make this channel, even if I wanted to, back during my freshman year. Number 4, favorite school subject. In terms of core subjects, I was always a fan of math, though art was the most fun. In terms of my major, in college, I had a good time with digital design. Number 3.14, do you like math? Yep, math was my bread and butter before university. I had good times with algebra and calculus. Trigonometry was hit or miss. Number 6. Favorite teacher. I had a contemporary issues teacher in high school who was fantastic. He had a deadpan, sarcastic sense of humor that I totally identify with. My art teacher in high school, who I had 2 years, was a lovable, unrelenting source of enthusiasm. And that reminds me, in art 2 we did hand molds. I turned mine into a zombie hand, and I stuck a tombstone behind it with the name of the first teacher I mentioned. I gave that to him as a gift before I graduated. In more recent years, my professor for digital design is someone I was really able to mesh with. Then he went out of his way to get me a fellowship to finance graduate school, and he'll be my advisor for the next couple years as I pursue a master's degree. Number pro tips. I'm going to college in the fall. Do you have any college tips? I'm probably not the best person to ask. Definitely keep up with classes, but don't ignore extracurriculars, especially ones that look interesting and are relevant to your degree. They can really help you when it comes to finding an internship or a job. Also, networking is a big deal. Try to accumulate contacts who can help your career down the road. On the social side, look for like-minded individuals. In college, people are usually more open and less judgmental. And if it's a big school like mine, there are bound to be niche special interest groups around campus. But even in your curriculum, it's to your benefit to make friends with others pursuing the same degree. They can be a great source of advice and support through the years you'll be attending. Number blank slate. What do you plan to do after graduating? Well, go right back to grad school. After a master's, I'm not sure. I doubt I'll go for a PhD directly afterward. I'd look for a job in the engineering industry. Number anyone can be anything. What is your dream job / ambition? You know, making a living as a Let's Player would be amazing. I'd love to be Markiplier or PewDiePie, but that's not even on my radar. I'm not really sure what I want to do with my degree specifically. It would be cool to contribute to virtual reality in some way. Category 4, behind the blank. Number 1, do you have a girlfriend or wife? No. Number 2, how old are you? 22. I forget this fact very often. Number 3, how tall are you? 6'2". Number 4, are you fat? After last semester, I could stand to lose a few more pounds. But no, not in the way I assume this question means. Number 5, will you ever do a face reveal? Sure. Number 6, ever been to a pony convention? Nope. Number 7, planning on going to one? If so, how would your fans know it's you to say hi or whatever? Yep, this year's BronyCon. Huh. I suppose I'd need to show my face here before the convention, wouldn't I? Number 8. If one of your subscribers would meet you in person and recognize you, what would be your reaction? On the inside, I'd probably think, wow, this whole YouTube thing is real, isn't it? On the outside, my first response would more likely be, hey, how's it going? Number 8. What do you look like? I've been compared to a couple people that many of you would know, but because you'll be seeing my face, I don't want to give specifics right now. Number 9. What's your real name? Daniel. Number 10. Do you have a middle name? If so, what is it? I do have one, but I'm not going to hand out my name piece by piece in these questions. Number 11. Do you have any nicknames? Siblings? Names? Most embarrassing moment? I've never really had any nicknames. I've been called Dan, and that's fine. I do have an older sister as well as an older stepsister. I don't have a single holy grail of embarrassing moments. I've been embarrassed plenty of times, and my brain loves reminding me about them all the time. I'm really bad about making myself feel terrible for little things I've done. Number 12. What sort of hobbies do you have? If you haven't noticed by this point, I keep up with gaming pretty closely, and I'm a bit of an enthusiast for film and TV. Those are really the only regular hobbies I have outside of MLP, this channel, and things related to engineering. Number 13. So, how's life? Could be worse. Number 14. Are you gay? I'll take this one as a serious question. No, I'm straight. Number 15. Are you awesome? I hope you say yes. C. Yo soy increíble. And the final category, Potpourri, a random mishmash of everything else. What is your name? Sir Blank Check of Equestria. What is your quest? To seek the end of this Q&A. What is your favorite color? Blue. Follow-up, favorite color? To be more clear, usually a deep blue, maybe even crossing over into indigo. Number secret origin story. Your OC looks almost exactly like the Blanks from the MLP creepypasta game Story of the Blanks. Is he inspired by those? No, I've never seen that. Next. Why do you automatically think we are humans? You are either human or you are dancer. There are no other options. I have only 2 questions for you, oh illustrious Blank Check. The first is a rather simple hypothetical. A trolley is running out of control down a track. In its path are 5 people who have been tied to the track by a mad philosopher. Fortunately, you could flip a switch, which will lead the trolley down a different track to safety. Unfortunately, there is a single person tied to that track. Should you flip the switch or do nothing? A look into a perception of morality and blame. Does doing nothing prevent blame, or is it just as viable a choice as flipping the switch? Does taking action condemn you as a murderer, despite those you saved? Having no context or information on the people involved, I would take the utilitarian approach and flip the switch. I believe that not taking action would eat away at me inside much more in the long run. The second may be a bit trickier. How's about the release date for your album, I Owe You a Hearing Aid? Any day now, as soon as I get Kanye to sign the label. Number all these. What are your favorite Michael Jackson, Queen, David Bowie, and Beatles songs? MJ, I think it would be Smooth Criminal maybe. Bohemian Rhapsody for Queen. David Bowie, Space Oddity, or The Man Who Sold the World. For the Beatles, that one's hard. Let It Be is up there. Maybe A Day in the Life. Who are your favorite musicians? I'm not really sure. I'm not as big or cultured on music as other entertainment. Michael Jackson and the Beatles are definitely up there, all things considered. In the past, I've enjoyed a lot of rock-related groups you'd find on Guitar Hero or Rock Band, like Guns N' Roses, the Rolling Stones, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Aerosmith, Led Zeppelin, Metallica, etc., even extending out to, say, Green Day. In terms of popular current artists, there's a place in my heart for Adele. I really don't keep good track of my favorite songs. Thinking about it, 2 of my favorites are cover songs. Jimi Hendrix's performance of All Along the Watchtower, and Johnny Cash's brilliant rendition of Hurt from 9 Inch Nails. Do you play any musical instrument? I don't. At one point I started to learn guitar, but that was a long time ago. Would you ever do cover songs? Probably not cover songs per se, but karaoke is still on the table. Favorite fantasy books? I'm pretty big on The Lord of the Rings, and I really should get around to reading A Song of Ice and Fire at some point. I read A Fire Upon the Deep by Vernon Vinge for a class a few years back, and I really enjoyed it. It's an interesting mix of sci-fi fantasy, split between 2 very different but intertwined stories. One being children stranded on a planet and taken captive by a race of medieval hive-minded canines in the midst of a civil war. The other a cosmic entity expanding across space, consuming and indoctrinating entire planets at a time. It's a ride. ¿Hablas español? Not well. I had 3 years of Spanish in high school, but most of it is long gone. Can you say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious? No. Can you react to my video? It's called Gift for Blank Check / Blank Slate. I don't talk in it because I lost my voice. It's fine if you don't. It's hard to react to something like this, but I did watch it and I wanted to give you a shout out. You made a pretty adorable drawing of blank, thank you. What does the fox say? We'll just see about that, Starwolf. If you were abandoned on an island, what 3 things would you take? Lefty, righty, and the moneymaker. If you could swap genders, what would you do first? I'm gonna go ahead and plead the 5th here. Do you enjoy firearms? Not particularly. What kinds of guns have you shot? BB guns. Do you ever daydream about being a pony and going on adventures with the main 6? Daydream, no, but I have had an actual dream about that. Rainbow Dash and I flew in a biplane over the Atlantic Ocean, crash landed in Africa, and were adopted by Simba's mother. I'm not joking. What's your favorite sandwich? Sandwich? I could go with a nice turkey ham roast beef style club, and I like to throw on spinach, cucumbers, and banana peppers. Or, if I'm okay with hating myself afterward, just give me a chicken parmesan sandwich. Jedi or Sith? Jedi. There are more of them. Team Captain America or Team Iron Man? Cap, always Cap. Are you into learning about crazy stuff along the lines of aliens, government lies, cover-ups, secret agendas,
The New World Order, the 2016 economic collapse, World War III, spirituality, true reality, Twilight Zone, string theory, quantum matrix,
Metaphysical eternal souls inhabiting physical bodily vessels, third eyes, revelations, Antichrist, the second coming, love in the true light, and searching endlessly for the truth and enlightenment?
No. Also, do you love Taylor Swift? Yeah, sure. Bernie 2016? Yeah, why not? ASL? 22 male Virginia. Race? Caucasian. Will you do more Q&As? Maybe. And lastly, where can I find a woman like Jessie's girl? Sorry, she's the one and only. If you could only save one from being eradicated from Earth, which would you choose? Bacon or ice cream? Ice cream. Bacon is amazing, but I've actually removed it from my diet over the past few years. You can only say no to this question and 5 other before or after this, so have fun. I refuse your reality and substitute my own. Is this a question? Is this an answer? Is this a question? If so, answer it with a question. Did you not see the previous question? What is the meaning of life? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of their 42s. Which would you rather take with you on a vacation? A cupcake or an apple? Apple. There are more situations where an apple feels appropriate. Also, I've eaten at least one apple almost every single day for several years now. And if I'm on a vacation, I'll likely be getting dessert at some restaurant anyway. Do you like fruits and vegetables? If so, which are your favorites? What's your favorite plant? Yeah, I'm a fan. For fruits, I'm addicted to golden delicious apples. Vegetables, I've always been a fan of broccoli. Weeping willows are nice. Why is the cake a lie? The nutrition facts on the box claim they're based on a 2,000 calorie diet, but the truth is, they're actually based on a 2,200 calorie diet. How do you keep so fabulous? I eat well sometimes, I sleep occasionally, and I ignore the rapidly approaching wasteland of responsible adulthood. Question: can you get any cooler? Only by about 20 No. How do magnets work? Well, you see, by attaching 2 magnets to a metal sphere with an eyeball on it, as well as drilling in 3 Phillips head screws, a magnet gains the ability to generate electric currents that it uses to defeat its enemies. And they evolve at level 30. It's basic science. How many seconds does it take to float a boat? The same as the number of licks it takes to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop. I was wondering, if you could be a thing for a day, what would it be? A mantis shrimp. How do you feel about Vape Nation? My only knowledge of Vape Nation, aside from walking through random clouds on campus, comes from Jeff Gerstmann of Giant Bomb, and that has made me very afraid. What is the other 98% in 2% milk? Tears. If you could have one superpower, what would it be and how would you use it? The power to give good answers to Q&A questions. What's your favorite Broadway musical? Les Mis, I suppose. I've never seen one in person. If you were given a signed blank check and told to fill in an amount, what would you do with it? On the line, I would write down the words "an amount" because I appreciate dumb jokes. Yo, bud, can you give me a shout out? Just kidding. No. Am I your friend? Sure. Plans for the summer? Avoid heat exhaustion, make videos, go to first convention. What is your favorite animal? Mantis shrimp. Look it up. Thing's badass. Do you like cats, dogs, or Temmies better? In my eyes, they're all equal. Trump or Hillary? I don't like to get political on this channel, but not Trump. Are these questions slowly going downhill? I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you help me find my left boot, the keys to my pickup, and what I did with my cheese?
Also, where even am I? Will there be blood for the blood god? Blood for the blood god! Skulls for the skull throne! Is chaos the only true answer?
Blood, darkness, will you drown the world in both? If the baked chicken stew from Tasmania is more colorful than urban monochromatic highway.
Kids, stay away from drugs. Are you crazy or are you an airplane? No, obviously you're an airplane. If pigs could fly, what country in Europe would you like to wear your favorite shirt in? And why inside out? Do you ever feel like a plastic bag, drifting through the wind, wanting to start again? Can I call you daddy when we have sex? As long as I can call you son. Do you enjoy anal fisting? Only when you do it, son. When did you find out you were gay? Around the time you were knuckle deep. Do you like hardstyle? I don't know. I'm not entirely sure what that means. My question is, can we be friends? Yes? Yes. Yes. What's your swag level? I asked that question to my magic 8 ball, and it said, try again later. I don't understand. Do you like waffles? Yes, I like waffles. Do you muffin? All the time. Do you like milkshakes? Is it a waffle milkshake or a muffin milkshake? Either way, yes. How did you become a brawny? I walked into the forest on a Monday morning before sunrise with nothing but a pair of socks and a sugar cube. I returned home the following Saturday with 2 pairs of socks and 0 sugar cubes. I'm sworn to secrecy on what happened in between. Why are you such a good senpai? Because I know when not to notice people. Who is best pony and why is it Rainbow Dash? Shut up, Kyle. Submitting my Q for the A. How do you feel about the fact that not one major financial institute suffered any criminal consequences following the financial crash of 2008? And what are your thoughts on the argument that this implies the US is an oligarchy rather than a democracy? Well, sorry, time's up. Bad luck. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of my big Q&A. For those who lasted through all of this, thank you for indulging me. And thank you for just being a part of this insane ride. This channel is time-consuming and stressful, but enjoyable and incredibly rewarding thanks to you guys. Over 16,000 subscribers at the time of this recording, something that was unimaginable less than a year ago. I still read every comment I get, and even if I can't respond to them all, I appreciate them so much. It's still crazy to me how this has taken off, and I'm excited to see what the future holds. Until then, guys, stay amazing and be yourselves.